against the Bloomberg profiler talk, so I really appreciate beating my estimate of 5 people attending my talk, where 3 of them are colleagues. So we'll go ahead and begin. Hi, I'm Paul Everitt, developer advocate at JetBrains, best damn job in the world for the best damn company in the world. We're here to talk about PyCharm and Django. Thank you for coming to my talk. I really appreciate that. See, you step out in the hall and you trash talk the other people and you get people to come in. We're going to talk about Django in PyCharm and how to be a badass. And if that was the talk you thought you were in, good. If you expected to be in another talk, I'm okay with you just getting up and leaving. I'll cry a little. I'll introduce my colleagues. Roberto, raise your hand. PyCharm PMM. If you have a deep, deep wish for PyCharm, he's one of the people to come talk to. And when you go look at our booth and you're like, wow, that booth glows, you can go talk to him about it and give him a pat on the back, and he'll give a shout out to Julia. And my colleague, Jody. Jody is giving a talk on Saturday on data science in Python. Jody is now more famous than me in Python, and I'm not bitter about that. Not at all. And then my new colleague, Galina, who is the big brain for the future of PyCharm roadmap. And one of the things we're doing in this talk is talking about being a badass in PyCharm, Django, getting in the flow, all that stuff, the I in IDE. Part of the book, or part of the talk, is going to cover material from Adam Johnson's Django developer experience booster, whatever, et cetera. And we're going to give away copies of his book in our booth, and Galina will talk to you about how we're doing that.
Yep, okay, thank you so much. So I'm Galina. You can find me at the JetBrains booth. I come up front so that you don't break your necks. Yep, so I have this card in my pocket that I will keep warm for you. It's so damn cold today. So you can just come up to the booth, find me. That's my face, but I don't think you're gonna see me without a mask because it's mandatory to wear one today. So you just come up and you find this badge, wherever it's on, and this person is gonna have those cards, and you can just ask me for a card. I have 3 of them, 3 different books and courses available. First come, first served. Please welcome to our booth downstairs after the talk.
All right. And if you ever ask yourself what it's like to run more than 200 kilometers in one single race, she can talk to you about that too, because she's a badass. Yeah. Yes. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Raise your hand if you are currently at PyCon. Yeah, cheap shot. Raise your hand if you have been doing Python longer than me. yeah, trick question. Raise your hand if you do a lot of Django. Raise your hand if you do a little bit of Django. Raise your hand if you use PyCharm. All right, cool. This talk is aimed at moving from decent Django development to great Django development. We aspire to greatness. We don't always get there. That's what talking to Roberto and Galina will be for. We're going to show how to get into the flow and accomplish a lot of your Django development tasks using the IDE, Integrated Development Environment. I'm going to really push the I. You want to use Git? Sit inside the IDE. It's got the world's best Git GUI integration. Same thing for all the different kinds of things that you might be tempted to go to a terminal and run PyTest instead of using it the way God wants you to, which is the integrated, awesome test UI in PyCharm. I'm a big fan of that one in particular. Brian Ocken also. As we go through this, I was joking before some of you got in here, my job is to entertain you and kill another 56 minutes. Your job is to entertain me, and so I was encouraging people to come up front because one of you is smarter at PyCharm in Django than me. Maybe 2, maybe 10, and you're going to have something I should have shared with everybody else and didn't. Stick your hand up, tell me what you got. If you see me do something and you have something that is an extension of that, stick your hand up, tell me what you got. If you have a question, stick your hand up. Yes, thank you. All right. Let's go ahead and begin. I'm going to begin with a PyCharm project that already exists, Django Tutorial Extended. You can get it from this GitHub repo that walks you through every step that I'm about to show. If I started from scratch, one of the nice things that PyCharm does for you compared to other approaches, you don't go to the terminal, make your own virtual environment, install some pip stuff in there, upgrade your pip, do 15 other things that hook up the settings. If you just go to File, New Project, Django, we will make a Django project for you. It will make a virtual env based on the clickety-clicks that you put in here, and it will do the pip install for Django, and then it will wire up some of the magical PyCharm settings. What are some of these magical PyCharm settings? If I type Django, that would be a pretty good idea for where I would get started. It will enable Django support with this information. I'm telling you this because if you didn't do it this way and just opened something and needed to wire it up manually, go to Settings, type Django, clickety-click. And then some other settings as well. Alternatively, you could go and clone this repo from VCS. This repo has a requirements.txt in it. And it will, as part of the cloning, say, hey, requirements.txt, I'll make a virtual env for you, and I will install all the packages in there. Oh, it's Django, I'll wire up the Django support. So that's the first thing that I won't be showing you. I'll be showing you the results of doing one of these steps. All right. Pause for a moment. Any questions? Any points to add? That was not the interesting part. Let's go ahead and run the Django server. Indeed. That is one of the types of interpreters that I could add. I'll turn on, I'm very aggressive on turning off all the Chrome in my IDE. So I'll turn on the status bar. And down here it tells me what interpreter I have. And it made this one for me. Nope, it inherited that one. I could add a new interpreter, local interpreter, and it would be Anaconda. I think it's putting it on the other screen. Yep. One of the choices is virtual env or pip env or poetry or conda. All right, onward. I'm going to go to this template. And I'm going to speed search to get there and get that set up. And I'm going to run the Django server. This is called a run configuration. This is the way that we help you start your Python interpreter for Django, for Flask, for Fast API, for your own thing. What would that actually look like? Let me edit that configuration just to show. This is what we would create for you if you did add new Django server and you filled in some questions. So instead, I will edit that and see, I really didn't fill in any of the details. I just accepted the defaults. But I got some things like don't run Django with reload, etc. So I'm going to run the Django server, and it's going to fire up. You'll see that it ran it with the reloader in place. I'm going to click on the link, and I have, via my colleague Mukul, a nice, pretty welcome to PyCon. And I can go look at the custom front end that is created for part of this workshop that shows the questions. What we did was we used the official Django tutorial. If you've gone through it, you might notice that it's polls. And so we just did the official tutorial and then added some things onto it. Okay, with that running, I've clicked on the link and I've navigated to the polls. If I went to like the image for, oh no. If I went here and deleted that, saved, then in the Django reload server automatically handles template changes, and so I just have to hit reload. This isn't a PyCharm thing, this is a Django thing. It's just to let you know that we are really in Django land. One of the things that will be cool in the future is if the world of Python catches up to the world of modern front ends and we're really good at live reload. Right now, we're not that great at it. Okay, let's say that I want to change not the templating, but the actual Python code. So I'm going to jump to index view using navigation by symbol. Pause for a moment. This is something I'm a really big believer in for the I in IDE. I never, ever think about files. I act like they don't exist. I think about symbols. I don't want to remember that this class was in this file, in this subdirectory. I always try to navigate by symbols or one of the other ways to navigate. It is a great relief for my brain to not memorize my file system, and I just turn off tabs and just quickly jump back and forth between things. So I'm now on the index view. I'll hide that. And in here, let's say I'm showing 3 questions right now. Let's say I just wanted to show 1 question. And now when I reload, I just get 1 question. Again, that's a Django thing. It's doing the automatic reloader, but it's part of this run tool that's down here that's a custom run configuration. And you see, in the act of doing that, we're just navigating from one thing to another a lot easier. You'll see that the Django server told us it was doing a reload. It saw, hey, views.py changed, I'm reloading. All right. Also related to kind of server-oriented things, we have a tool window custom to manage.py. So I'm going to do an action so I don't have to memorize every damn key combination. I've memorized like 2, and this is one of them. So I'll type manage.py, say enter, and you'll see that we have a console down here with things like this. So I can run make migrations, give it some arguments, we'll prompt for it, etc. It added what's the file that it added? Something.0002 or something like that. And I could choose to go ahead and add that to Git. Yes?
You search by symbols, but what is search by actions and then what is
Sure, good question. My colleagues would say, just do shift. Oh, Paul. Broke the first rule of presenting. Turn on presentation mode so you can see at the bottom what I'm typing. Shift is the one thing to rule them all. Confusing. And then it has tabs for all these other things, and you can memorize some of them or you can memorize all of them. I haven't memorized classes because classes are a symbol. I'm just trying to narrow the pile down a little bit. Did that answer the question? Oh, okay. So the question is, what are actions for? Actions are things you do in the IDE, like running some code, refactor, rename, anything that would have a keystroke that you don't want to memorize. In fact, so watch, I'm going to do an action called shift, search everywhere. Look at the bottom. It will tell you the name of the action, and then cover it up. And it will tell you the path to do it through the menu. Yep.
Can you just repeat the questions?
Yes, yeah. 2 rookie mistakes I've made so far. Gonna have to have some coffee. Okay, now we're going to get into a little bit of soapbox. I'm running the server, right? Cool. I'm running it under the regular run machinery, but what if I just run it under the debugger? PyCharm and all of our IDEs have several things that people love about us. One of the biggest ones is our debugger, our PyCharm debugger, has been great for a decade, especially when combined with Django. And thanks to Apple, our CPUs are so fast now that you won't really notice the performance hit in development. So always be debugging, that's what I say. Because if I run into a problem and to investigate it, I need to stop the run, start the debug, and then stop it and go back. I'm just going to do a print statement. Ugh. Instead, if you're already in debug mode, you just put a breakpoint there. So let's see what this would look like. I'm going to put a breakpoint in here, right here, get query set in index view. All right, and I'm going to go back over, hit reload, and it stops right there. And maybe I have a bug and I'm trying to fix it. Maybe I don't know what I wrote last week and I just want to poke around. And I'm now sitting in something where I can type expressions. I could say something like index view dot template name. Oh, okay, that's what the template name is. I could copy some of this code, right-click, and say evaluate expression, and then interactively poke around. I could change state. And now in this frame, in the stack frame, I've changed some state, I've added some state, whatever, and then I could step into this code and go down into the Django ORM and poke around and see what's going on. For me, this is a great way to work. Always try and stay inside the I in IDE. Now, there's more that I could do on this. I'm going to go to the template for this. I mentioned did I say something about I hate files? Did I say something about that? So I want to go to the template for this, and we put a nice little gutter icon here to navigate to the template. And then in the template, nice little gutter icon to go to the view. So I'm going to go to the template. I'm going to click like here. No, here. Here. This is a Django template. It's not Python, right? But our debugger works in Django templates. This to me is can I say BFD? Can I say BFD? This is a BFD. Because what would you do if you couldn't do this? Sprinkle some HTML comments in there to sprinkle to the output and just wiggle the wires until you figured out what was going on. With this, I can stop here. I've got a stack over here that I can go back up through all the Django stuff until I get to the code that might have called me to see what Django might have done wrong. I get to see all my variables here. I get to step over things as if it was Python code. Much better way to work. And again, always be debugging. If you're already in the debugger and you're just in the middle of writing templates and you get confused, just click, hit reload somewhere, and it will stop and you can figure out what's going wrong. Any questions on that? Raise your hand if you have used the PyCharm debugger with Django. Please, everybody raise your hand. Please. All right. Question or hand raise? Yep. So the question was, when debugging the template, do you have access to the context and what was the other question? Request. They are in scope, so yes. Yep. And you have access to them, and in that little variable view thingy at the bottom, you can expand them, go down further, see what they were. That is one that is a little bit tricky because, with class-based views versus functional views, we've got to know what is the magic thing on the class that says where the context comes from, in addition to the dictionary that you return as part of the view, if you do. Yeah. In fact, exactly what you're saying, the reason the breakpoint stopped on that line is because it was generating this. Okay, any other points or questions? Yes?
Being in the debugging mode, you already mentioned there isn't a performance penalty.
Ish.
Okay. When did this change? Was there an improvement recently that being in debugger is kind of advertised as a first-class way to do the development or change?
Sure. The question was, when did it become fast? What was the cause for me making that statement? So a number of years ago, actually, through this awesomely beneficial, munificent company called JetBrains. We helped fund a speed up to PyDevD to rewrite parts of it in C, in Python actually. So that was the first speed up. And then JetBrains went to Apple and convinced them to ship these new CPUs that would just speed everything up. So you can thank us for that too. All right. Any other questions or points about debugger? I have no idea how I'm doing on time. Okay, let's get into some IDE features when you're doing Django development. Oh, no, I'll leave you running because always be debugging.
Quick question.
Yep.
That happens, if you accidentally close that debugging window, is there a way to reattach to the process?
So the question is, if I said terminate there, it would terminate the process.
No, I mean, I had cases where it was kind of still running, but it
Yeah,
closed,
yeah.
run it, right?
I'll choose to blame Watchdog for that. You might have installed, there are different ways to do the watcher for Django, and those all sound like much better culprits than us. So I'm more than willing. No, honestly, get in touch with us if it's a chronic thing. Okay, IDE features for Django. Speeding up your development velocity and feeling joy in this world. I want to show how we autocomplete magic strings in Django. We were talking about symbols and things, navigate by symbol. That includes strings, not just templates and classes. So I want to get to settings. How can I get to settings? Nope, not that. Instead, I will shift, INS, and I will jump directly to installed apps because that's what I'm thinking I want to go to. I don't want to go to my settings.py file. I want to go to installed apps. Watch this. Cool. We know that in Django, this symbol, which is a list of strings, points at package names, Python package names. And since we've indexed the world for you, we know who's naughty and nice, and we can autocomplete on that, and we could even do something like that. Spot a typo. So that's one case of autocomplete doing your work for you. So if I'm typing this, I'm like, what was it? Poll config or polls config? I'll just skip both and do that. Oh, yes, thank you, speed typing, for completing that for me. I'm going to go to open the index.html file in the templates. Apologies, I will open the file system back up. Some of the things I did to get some of the magic is I walked up to these directories and right-click, mark directory as template folder. And then others are like resource root, and I can get autocomplete on PNG files and things like that. That's only in the case when it isn't in a well-known place. Okay, so I'm in the template index.html for the polls, and I'm on latest question list. This was the question just a second ago about context. So we know that these two are associated, so I can say and I could navigate to it. If I'm like, what was the definition of that? Oh, it's over there. So same spot in index.html. I want to, let's see. No, I just showed latest question list. I'm going to go back to installed apps. I'm going to go to it by symbol this time instead of search everywhere. And in here, if I want to navigate, we just showed autocomplete. I get navigation there as well. So sometimes in Django, we've got support for these magic strings. Personally, not a fan of the magic strings method because of the word magic in front of strings. But we have taught and continue to try to teach PyCharm Django's magic. Yep, we showed that. And then from an auto import perspective, if I'm in, let's see, I want to do auto import. I'm going to go to URL patterns, So Control-Alt-O, URL patterns. This is, if you do Django, this is familiar to you. This is where you wire up your URLs. You see that we have imports from views. But what if I didn't want to have to type views, but then I've got to go and say, like, oh, index view. Okay, so I got to type from, what was it? Where was it? You don't have to do that. You can just say index view. Oop. And it will autocomplete for you. And it will autocomplete and put the import for you and format your imports according to your preferences for how you like imports done. By default, we put core stuff and then a new line and then your stuff, and sorting as well. And then if you've got rules about collapse all the things from one package into a paren separate, blah, 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 blah. And so I'll go ahead and put this back the way it was, because it doesn't have the as view in it. The auto import, there are a couple of things that I really want to push for. I talked about some of them. Navigate by symbol. Please, please, please. Let the IDE do the work for you. Talked about always be debugging. This is a case of let the IDE do the navigation for you. Always let the IDE generate your import for you. You may be having a great day, and you're like, I know where that package is. Bam, 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 crap, back, 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 bam, crap, back, 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 back. The IDE could have done all of that for you, and it will put it in the right place for you. Always try to let autocomplete do the work for you. Let's say I am in the index view. So, I'm in the index view. I can navigate to it. This one, I'll leave the file picker up. Watch this. So I'm typing a template, and I want to say index. Oh, good. Thank you, IDE, for doing my work for me. Enter. Oh, thank you for letting me navigate to it, IDE. That was really nice. Thank you for letting me know that didn't exist. Thank you, IDE. That was really nice. IDE, I don't like the name index. I like DJ for Django index in front of things. I could type that, and I could go over and rename that, etc. Or I could refactor rename and say, DJ, watch what happens over here. Did I not have them all selected? Oh. I think it did it. It just, I can't find, where, do I have it in a different template name? Oh, it's down here. That's why. Oh, I meant to do that. Because you can undo all of that. Oh, but I've already done something. All right, let me put it back the way it was. It's part of the script. Okay, so keep an eye down here while I rename this so that it renames the file. I change my mind, and it puts it back the way it was. There are a lot of cases where the action that we were talking about, an action, does this, that, and the other thing, and you can undo it back to this, that, and the other thing, including get registration. Okay, that is the end of that segment. Any questions or comments or suggestions? Any pro tips on that? All right, let's get into some fun template support stuff. I'm going to go back to my template. Yep, sure.
So in the import order, if we define the import order in some local file like docs.ini or like file.
Sure.
Will that be, so for example, we work together as a team and everyone uses a different ID. Can the import order be honored by
Sure.
from the local file?
The solutions to that, the question is, hey, I can set my import preferences for me. Yay, I'm on a team though. My team does not agree with me. We have a policy. Where do I put that policy? One of the things that I have in here, if we get time, is to do editor config, which covers a lot of things. I'm not sure it covers all those things. But you can also put them in tooling like Black, And I have in here to show the community plugin for Black, which I use all the time. Okay, I'm in a template, and on line 12, I want to show recreating this from scratch and using let the IDE help me. First thing I'm going to do is this thing called Emmet, E-M-M-E-T, for markup generation, IMG tab, and it starts prompting me for things. Now I'm going to, in the middle of here, start doing Django template support, and I get autocomplete. Then I'm going to go into the string, and I get autocomplete. If you were to ask yourself, hey, I wonder if I could navigate to that PNG file and actually view it in the IDE. So you can. It's a string inside a template, inside Python, and we have taught the IDE how to handle all those things. Yep. This word static right here? Or do you mean the value in here? Sure. So the question is, where is it getting this from? So there are well-known places in Django, right? And then you write apps that are supposed to conform to a convention, but maybe it doesn't. And if you start auto-completing, it will look in the places it knows to look and see if it's got a child with the letters that you're typing. And you can influence that by walking up to something. Like this is a well-known place. But if it wasn't, if I named it something different, I could go and say, speed up. Mark directory as resource root. And then the IDE will treat that as a choice. Does that answer the question? All right, cool. So I did this about the squiggly, all of that. So in that case, if I put in a typo, I get noticed about that as well. Or if it's not a typo and I go and rename it on the other side, it will know. And you can actually do a search across all of your project for any problems such as that. You don't have to just be staring at it and guess that it's there. Okay. Before I get into the part that entertains me, is there anything you wanted me to show that I'm not? I will leave room for the truly sexy stuff in just a few minutes. That's the truly sexy stuff I had in mind. So since you said so, I have attached this SQLite file to the database tool. PyCharm Professional ships with WebStorm, which I'm also a developer advocate for, and DataGrip, our IDE for SQL. And so I can walk up to a table, I can browse it, I can edit data, I can do queries, I can refactor, rename columns, and it changes in the code or vice versa. I can navigate, because we treat SQL stuff as symbols. Very good.
So what do you mean by treat SQL stuff as symbols?
If I was over, I'm in the Django ORM, but if I was custom writing some SQL, and I said query equals select star from, etc., and I could teach it that this is a SQL string. Yep. In fact, I could tell it it's a SQLite string, and then I can get autocomplete on my tables and my columns. Ooh, it's badass. Oh, let's just do that. Since we're here, does anybody remember one of the columns I had? Question ID. Yay, good. All right. Etc. Look, by the way, I just navigated to that. I'm sitting on question ID and I navigated to the definition. Yep.
Question. So you were able to ask for it on the fly? Is there a way to put a comment or something so that the IDE can know it?
It did. I didn't actually select. When I did inject language, it just knows capital select. We think that's a SQL string, especially since I've configured a data source. The question was, instead of me telling it that this string in Python is SQL, could it just know? And it does just know.
Okay. Tell us more about how it just knows. There's 3 different kinds of SQL. How would it know which kind?
It can, the well-known keywords in the SQL grammar. Mm-hmm. I don't know the answer to that. I wish I did. As soon as I started saying that, I thought somebody's going to ask me and I'm going to be embarrassed. Then let's just say it does. Let's live in that world. The question was, I said that refactor rename would change your code and your database structure. Would it go and change your model definition somewhere, like in your migration files or something like that? I don't know. Sounds like a damn good feature request, doesn't it? If only the PyCharm PMM was sitting right there. Okay, let's do some full stack stuff. Raise your hand if you do like React front ends or anything like that. Not as many as I thought. Good, because we should be doing HTML, not JavaScript. But some people are, so let me show a quick tour through that. First, what I'll start with is this is a project that has the Django REST framework in it. Doing okay on time. Which means we know how to say JSON back to people asking for JSON instead of HTML. When you're developing like that, you might be tempted to go in the browser, use Postman, other kinds of ways to issue API requests. Instead, we've got this not nearly well enough appreciated thing called HTTP files. It's a file you can put into version control, share with everybody in the repository, open the file, and issue HTTP requests. That's an HTML request. That is a JSON request. It's got all kinds of features where you can parameterize variables, get a cookie, and put it in the next request. I can connect it, for example, to... I'm running a... Wrong index view? Oh, I want this one. I can connect it to setting a breakpoint, and then going back to the HTTP and issue a request and stop on that breakpoint. Didn't have to go to a browser to issue the request. I am currently running the server in the background. It's a requirement to use the feature because it assumes you want to issue an HTTP request. It's an HTTP file that's issuing an HTTP request. I spent a lot of time thinking about your question. The question was, do you have to be running a Django server? I'm going to show, if we get time, how to do testing without running a Django server using test client. The default is that, that's right, the default, maybe not the wise. So I will make sure we get time to get to that because I advertised it in the talk description about test first development. Okay, so with that, I can do other front end, yes? Mm-hmm.
Is that HTTP spec just specific to JetBrains, or can that be used in other editors as well?
It can be used in any of the 0 other editors that implement it.
I do work at a company where I am fighting every day to get people to use PyCharm, but I sometimes use that.
That's all right. That's all right. I actually don't even know anybody else is doing it. It's an attempt to replace Postman. Cool. The question was, is that HTTP file, is that syntax used by any other tools? None that I know of. Yes?
I assume you support
Put, post, blah, blah, blah. Hey, let's see. If only I could get, oh yeah, autocomplete. Yeah.
So, yeah, I love the examples part because it saves you the trouble of setting up lots of it.
Uh-huh.
It will give you lots of examples, and I just
So we have someone who knows this feature.
love it.
Yeah.
And there are some plugins on VS Code that poorly copy this.
All right.
But
So that answers,
like
yep.
that.
Yeah.
I was also in a fight. Everybody uses VS Code. I'm the only one with JetBrains. I'm like, I'm not changing to this thing at all. But I told them that they could use this, and I've added the file, and I told them you can just download a plugin that will enable the same features that JetBrains ships with it. It's like,
We'll leave this out of the recording if that's all right. Was there another point or question? Another thing I want to add, this is kind of a coming soon. We support it for Fast API and SQL Alchemy. What if you could autocomplete this side? So that is something we call our endpoints feature that provides like code intelligence over into HTTP front ends and things. Like you could be sitting in the middle of a JavaScript fetch, get the promise back, result.data. And you may think, hey, over on the other side, I've got this Swagger API who says, what is the structure of this response? If only yeah, we could do that. So for Fast API, we can do that. We just need to teach the Django orm to do it. Let's say I'm in my template, my main, or no, I want to go to base. I'm in my base template. Anybody recognize any of this? It is this, Tailwind. And one of the things that, because I've already done it, I can't really show doing it, I don't think. Yep. We'll prompt and we'll say, hey, we noticed you're using this library out on the web. Do you want us to download it and index it? So I said, yes, download it and index it so that I can get autocomplete. Oh, I didn't get autocomplete on that one. Which one? Yep. That flexes from something else. And then, in fact, I will accept that, and I can navigate to it. Because I downloaded the minified version, it's not as useful. I will say go ahead and reformat that, and I get a better version of it. The WebStorm integration is so freaking cool. It exhibits itself in numerous ways, such as CSS to HTML, navigation, refactor, rename, etc. Yep. Right, no, you had your hand up? Yes, we have something called scopes. It may not be what you're asking for, but you can say only autocomplete in my project or in library sources or anything under this file system, or you can make custom scopes. The question was how to filter the autocomplete.
So you use the term PyCharm, WebStorm, data clip and everything, being different products marketed.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm getting an understanding that for all purposes, if I pick one ID which I use IntelliJ, it's all going to get integrated.
Yes, if you have IntelliJ Ultimate, you have everything. That is our answer for if you want everything. Yep. I actually use Bulma. And sometimes I have Bulma locally as an NPM install. Sometimes I point to it with a link tag. And either way, I can index it. That answer the question? Okay, so that's Tailwind. All right. Let's go ahead and show the React front end. I'm going to go to my package.json. This is where I can see a little bit of cool stuff from WebStorm. In here, I can autocomplete on package names and autocomplete on versions instead of having to memorize things or go to the command line and do npm install -d Axios at 1.3.16, whatever. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the front end process under Vite which is kind of a Node.js thingy. Now I have a very ugly front end that I wrote. This is not Mookel's fault. This is my fault. But we are able to do React stuff. For example, if I want to go to the app component, navigate by symbol, not source.app.app.tsx. This will open the file, jump directly to the symbol. It's jumping to where I last was in that symbol. And so this is the React component for app. Let's say I hadn't added the navbar yet. I can get autocomplete of all the components in my project. And watch up here. It will generate the import for me, and then I can close it and navigate to that symbol. Lots of cool features, like I could take that and extract that to its own component. And I'll call that blah. And I could say maybe a function-based component. And so it put blah here, made me a component here, and I could then move that to its own file. So a lot of code intelligence, developer productivity, stay in the flow, the I in IDE. I'm going to get into some of the things that Adam Johnson covers in his book, because I promised I would do it, and I've got time. He talks about in full stack development, letting you use tooling. So we use, Flake 8 and Pylint and Black and everything on our side. What do they use on their side? Lots of choices. The market has spoken. They like something called Prettier. I have Prettier installed in my package.json, so we know that Prettier is there, and I can tell the IDE, when I say format, I want you to format with Prettier, not with your own built-in formatting. When you save, every time you save, run Prettier on it, and then write the file. So, for example, one of the things in Prettier will be fixing that. So now I reformatted code, and it reformatted using Prettier. Control-Alt-L is burned to a crisp on my keyboard, because in the world of front ends, I reformat my code. I don't know if any of you do this. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this project. Ugh. Reformat. I just keep hitting reformat as if I'm programming until I get back in the flow of what code I was trying to write. Okay, that handles Prettier and ESLint. Let's talk about Black. That's another thing in Adam's book, which, again, we have coupons for available over in our booth. We don't, at the moment, directly integrate Black support, but there is a community plugin. So if I go to plugins and I look at installed, I started using this last summer. I can tell you it's good. This is a plugin for IntelliJ called Black Connect. It exhibits itself in preferences. Hey, format yourself. What's wrong with you? And so if I go to Black Connect, I'll see the options. And I'll say I currently have it not set because I was going to show you. Well, let me go ahead and show you. We have editor config support. So let's say what you really want is a world with 14 spaces for indentation. That sounds like a great world to be in. So I'm going to go back to my index view, and I'm going to reformat my code, not with Black. This is with just PyCharm out of the box. So reformat code. Reformat code looks really good. So if you get paid by the space character, then this editor config setup is for you. But I don't, so I'm going to go and put it back to something natural. But then I can turn on Black, and instead of using editor config and PyCharm, I'm going to use what my team uses, what CI uses, Black. And with this plugin, I can say whenever I do a reformat in PyCharm, don't use PyCharm's reformatting, use Black. Same thing for whenever I save. So again, if I space, reformat that, I actually used black for that. In any of the 2 settings that black supports for configuration, it would use it. Did I see a hand starting to go up?
So I had a question on, like, can I do a reformat on a folder?
Yes, actions. We talked about, the question was, can I reformat a folder? Actions can be taken on we talked about scopes, right? Actions can be taken on a scope or a hierarchy or the entire project. All right. On to some more things that Adam talks about in his book. He talks about inline documentation, or having a website, a web page open so you can quickly see documentation for all of these Django things. You know what's better than leaving your IDE for documentation? You know what's better than that? Not leaving your IDE for documentation. So I can just mouse over that, get doc strings, and get a link to go view it. And in fact, if I'm in my index.html, I'm getting my stuff from, look at the bottom on this, from MDN. We actually give them some money to financially support them, and I could click on that link and go get the same information in full narrative form. That feature alone, I'm a man of a certain age. The past self is opaque to me, is opaque to current Paul. I don't remember what I wrote, so I leave notes to myself in doc strings. So I can just hover over something, or I do type annotations and that kind of thing. Virtual environments we covered. PyCharm's really good at discovering virtual environments and making them for you. We talked about the React front end and prettier. I have IPython installed. You can see it because it's right there. I could install a different version. And then PyCharm will say, hey, I see there are changes. Would you like to install the changes? That's a convenient little thing. With IPython installed, now if I go to the Python console, I'll go through it this way. When we fire up the thing in PyCharm called the Python console, the interactive REPL, notice we also fire up the Django support. And notice because what PyCharm did was said, hey, do you have IPython installed? Oh, you do. That must be because you want to use IPython. So now the REPL looks like IPython instead of the normal bracket REPL. And all those things that you would expect from IPython, like syntax colorizing and its autocomplete, you would get. That's the Python console with IPython. We talked about editor config and black. And let's see. Now, yes, I have this mystical ability to pull in at the exact time. So I've got 7 minutes to show the thing I wanted to show. Testing. We all do it wrong. We write Django code. We go over to our browser and hit reload. We go sprinkle print statements to the console. We do console log in the HTML to look at the dev tools. We go to our terminal to run our tests. Boing, 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 boing. All of that friction. What if you could just stay in one place and get all of your workflows brought to you? What if you could develop an entire site and never go to a browser? That's the way I do my front-end development. It's the way I do my Django development. So let's go to a test. And this is a test in Django. This is a test in Django using PyTest. Let's find out who's naughty and nice. Raise your hand if, or let's go back to the beginning. Raise your hand if you do Django development. And keep it up. All right. Raise your hand if you do Django development and write tests. So we have a few honest people and a few people who are pulling my leg. Raise your hand if you do PyTest instead of Django Test Runner. Okay. We do, JetBrains does the Django Developer Survey, and we did the one in 2022, right? Roberto works with the Django Software Foundation. We actually generate 25% of their revenue through the Django giveaway thing that we do. That's about right? In last year's survey, way more, like 15% more people used PyTest as a Django test runner than the Django test runner. I was surprised about that. I thought more people would use the Django test runner. Raise your hand if you use the Django test runner and not PyTest. You raised your hand both times. No, you didn't. Okay, all right. So I'm using PyTest in this project, and I'm using PyTest Django to give me this cool database fixture that will do an in-memory database and throw it away on every request and have some little fix-up functions and stuff like that. And I'm also doing a fixture to populate the database, which is thrown away on every test. But I'm also importing the Django test client. And I'm not importing it. It's a fixture that could be provided to me. And when you were asking your question about the server, watch this. Do you agree that I am not running a Django server? So I just issued a web request, got HTML back, put it through Beautiful Soup, and asserted that it had the number of poll questions that I was looking for. Because the Django test client is a fake WSGI server, WSGI. It's not an actual socket or anything. It just intercepts, and everything downstream thinks an actual HTTP server was involved, which makes this a super cool way to develop. What I do is I split right, and I put my code over here, and I put my code here, test output here, and that's my moment of zen. It programs my brain that I'm under control. When I see this, I'm in the flow, I can go slow, and I can go to the correct index view, and I can put a breakpoint, and I can run my tests under the debugger. Yep. And I can move that, and I can continue, and I can run it again under the debugger. And it didn't stop that time. But then I can say, hey, is it really 0? Okay, I don't have to do anything different. Just rerun it. It's the debugger. Stops right there, and I can look at the rows. Right there. Did I go to Chrome? Did you see Chrome? Did you see Firefox? Did you see Safari? I can stay right here under total control with the debugger and the testing, no server involved, and it's freaking fast. It is such a more joyful way for me to develop. And I'm leaving behind all of these little statements. You know, Beautiful Soup lets me do CSS queries to go select things. I'm not using Selenium. And I'm building up a base of tests, which later will save, let me see if I get this right, save future Paul from current Paul, or maybe current Paul from future Paul. One of the Pauls. Because I'm building up these tests, not because I want to eat my vegetables. It's actually because I'm lazy and I don't want to go to a browser all the time. Yes?
So in PyTest, certain fixtures have certain scopes.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Can you see what fixtures are activated with a particular test? Because some fixtures have
PyTest has a knob where you can turn on like verbose mode, and it will tell you for whatever test you chose. Like I said, go walk up to that one test and run it, and PyTest would tell you that. Sure. In this release cycle, we are improving our fixture support. Come to the booth and see us. Because that's actually a pretty good point. What I'd love to be able to do is mouse over that and have it tell me, navigate to it.
So I was just debugging a problem with fixtures
Uh-huh.
and we're in weird scoping.
Yep.
And so, like, data appeared in the database that was just randomly there that shouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
So I was like, crap, how'd that get there?
And your first thought is it's session scoped instead of, yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, there you go.
So it's like,
There you go.
okay, so
Yeah.
how do I know what when I'm writing these tests?
Yeah. That's a good idea. At the moment, our work is focused on getting you to the right fixture, because if you override in magical ways, we are good but not great at resolving to the correct one that PyTest would have chosen. That's our first thing, but that's a very interesting idea, because we probably have that information available because we indexed it. Any other questions? 1 minute over. That's all right. This is a hell of a question. So remember, anyone that's here that wants a copy of Adam Johnson's book, go over to our booth, see Galena. She's got the coupons. If you have a killer idea about how we could make Django development great, go see Roberto. And then he can follow up with you. We can file a ticket. Go look and see if someone's already requested, that kind of thing. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating. Come see me tomorrow in my PyScript talk. It's going to be modestly informative, but certainly funny. I aim for entertainment. And come and see us in the booth anytime with ideas. Thank you for sitting through this.